Be strong.
My friend Byron and I are just here, two friends, to sit down and have a much needed candid conversation.
Right.
So we're not going to talk to the cameras this whole time. We're going to talk to each other. And so we invite you to listen in to our conversation, and we encourage you to have similar conversations.
Right.
That must be had, because number one, you can't have relationship without communication.
Right.
And you can't learn unless you listen.
Right.
And two, when we share conversations like this, it can help other people who haven't gotten to the point where they feel comfortable.
Spark that conversation.
So I appreciate you, man, just being my friend, and thanks for being open and honest with me, and thanks for being candid with me tonight.
No, man, I thank you for the invite. This is what we understand. Like we said, you all, it's not Pastor Byron, not Pastor Calhoun on this segment. It's not Pastor Jason or Pastor Dorsey. It's actually Byron and Jason. And like you said, man, this is very much well needed. I believe this for the purpose. And I know at our church, one thing I always do is make sure I put the purpose with every agenda that I have. And I think one thing for this would be, a good purpose would be for whoever views this, like you say, it would spark a well-needed conversation. We're living in a time now where, your co-workers, maybe, and I'm just going to throw this out there, multiracial or families, basketball teams, schools, and all that. So there's some things some other cultures may want to know about other cultures. So I'm happy that you invited me I was chosen.
Well, man, we just have always, we talked about this the other day, that, you and I came to Lone Oak at the same time.
Right.
And that we just kind of sparked a friendship from the beginning.
Right.
And you preached at my place, I preached at yours.
Right.
And we've served together in the community and at the school and prayed together and fellowship together and hung out. And So one thing I think that's important, man, and the reason why I asked you to come here, I didn't want to have this conversation at the church, at either of our churches. I want to have it in a personal environment,
right?
And I think it's just important, man, to sit down at someone's table, to share a meal together, and really get to know somebody. So when you go in somebody's house, to me, it's kind of crossing a threshold of relationship.
Right.
Because, I've got a lot of acquaintances, and I've got a lot of close friends. I've never been in their house.
Right.
But to have a conversation like this, while we're sitting here at my table,
right.
I think lets the guard down a little bit.
Right.
And so I think that's important. Who is Byron? Because I know you for who, I've known for the last 5 years.
Right.
But I don't know who made this man, Tell me about your parents, about your upbringing, what life was like as a kid.
Come from a educated family, school. Father's a retired principal. Mother's a retired teacher. Both brought us up in church. Church in my household was not an option. Church in my household, even throughout college, when you quote unquote, when you think you're grown, until we moved out of that house, church was not an option. And so even from both sets of grandparents literally poured into my mother and my father to be the best you can be.
Yeah.
Literally a praying family. We're old school. We still do Sunday dinner. We still go to my mother. We literally still go to my mother's house every Sunday.
Well, now that's new school. Because we just about come out of a cycle that now to do that would be something new for a lot of people.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. But I'm literally a family man. I love family, but the part a lot of people don't know about me, I guess you would have to know me to know this, and a lot do it. I'm a jokester, man.
Yeah.
I literally, you will probably never see me go a full day without smiling or laughing at something. I will find something funny in everything.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna find something funny. Like if I'm preaching and somebody's falling asleep, I'm a giggle. I'm a giggle. It's just something that is funny to me. I don't know. So, man, I'm literally, man, that was my upbringing, man. Literally just a family man. Man had strong, was strong family oriented, strong ethics, morals, and all that, man.
Where did you grow up?
I was born in Crossett, Arkansas. Crossett, Arkansas is where I was born. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we lived there till I was either 2 or 3. That's when we moved to North Little Rock. As we moved here, so from Ashley County to Pulaski County, and that's where we grew up. Parents met at Philander Smith College, and out of my 3 other siblings, I'm the favorite. They don't like this. I want them to see this video. I want my siblings to see this video and know that I am my mother's and my father's favorite child. Number 3 is the favorite. They love me more than they love the grandbabies.
Woo, that's pretty tall right there. That's pretty confident.
Yeah, man.
So you were number 3.
I was number 3.
So you say you were 2 or 3 years old when you moved to Little Rock?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what school did you go to?
I went to Balmedo Elementary, which was a school my mother worked at, which was right across the street from the school I went to for preschool. So if I got in trouble, she walked across the street. Yeah.
Which didn't happen though.
Yeah. 1st through 6th grade, Balmedo. Now this was before how they do it now. I think high school now is what, 9th through 12th? Is that it?
Yeah.
So junior high, my father was my principal.
Wow.
7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
And those are the toughest years for a lot of kids.
Exactly.
And he was your principal?
He was my principal. 10th, 11th, and 12th in high school, my mother's sister was the biology teacher. My father's sister was a teacher there as well. So I had 2 aunts in the high school.
That did you good, man.
Man, it was it's kind of tough to grow up.
That's good. You had no place to hide.
Had no place to hide, man. Kind of tough to, man. So needless to say, I was kind of familiar with school or typical district conversation or whatnot, or just hearing the conversation from an educational perspective, just kind of hearing how things work behind the scenes or whatnot, and how serious, how not it was, even some of the discretion, even some of the on the, I guess we could say even on a political stance. Sometimes I just kind of heard different points of views.
Yeah.
In the region, in the arena of education. So
they were, whether intentionally or unintentionally, teaching you how to lead.
I think that's what it was, because they would never have a personal conversation. I'm like, with personal information on this is what I did with them, this is what I did with them. It was never that.
Yeah.
But we would just kind of hear, some of the, like you say, the back of the scenes conversation or whatnot, and kind of hear some of that. So and it would, man, you hear a lot of leadership on this is how I handle this situation. This is how I handle this situation. And then it taught me a lot on how to, even on how to lead myself and pastor sometimes.
Yeah.
I really believe that sometimes life experiences are some of the best lessons you can achieve in life.
Yep.
Yeah. They are. What about you?
I'll tell you about me a little bit. I went to the earliest school that I remember was in Helena.
Okay.
So when I was 2 years old, my dad has always pastored. He was an evangelist before I was born. I've got one older sister.
Okay.
And they had pastored a little bit before I was born, and then moved to. We were at Clarksville. I was born at Sparks Hospital in Fort Smith.
Okay.
But then when I was 2, we moved to Helena, West Helena now, but we were living in West Helena then.
Gotcha.
That was long before it was Helena, West Helena.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to kindergarten and first grade there, and we lived there 5 years. So when I was 7, we moved to BB, and my parents pastored there for 33 years.
Okay.
And so that's where I went to, from second grade all the way through high school. I graduated high school there. And then that's where I met my wife. We grew up together.
Wow.
So we've known each other since I was 7 and she was 5.
Wow, man.
And we dated in high school, at least when she was in high school. And then we got married and went off to Bible college. I attended at UALR and ASU.
Mm-hmm.
But then finished my Bible degree in Springfield, Missouri, and then we got in ministry. But
that's good.
But I was the same way, man. I had godly parents, godly grandparents, and just couldn't have asked for better.
Right.
I can't blame them for the stupid stuff I've done.
Right.
That's for sure.
Right.
Because I couldn't have asked for better parents.
Right.
But so growing up, for me, there's been I've always had an awareness of racial tensions.
Right.
Because when we were at Helena, we weren't the minority everywhere, but I was in the minority in my class. My sister was in the minority in her class because most of the other kids there were black.
Right.
And so I've just always been aware of racial differences.
Right.
When we moved to BB, I remember going to White County. I remember seeing that. And I remember thinking it's because there's no black people here.
Yeah. because that sign.
Because compared to Helena,
it was totally different.
It was totally different.
Right. So basically, a culture shock from what you was used to, and being the minority from Helena.
Yeah.
All right.
Even then, and so I just remember coming into White County and thinking, it's because there's no black people here. Because all I saw was white people. Right. Now we had, as we got into school, we moved there in the summertime. We got into school, and of course, I had friends in school that were black, but it was they were definitely the minority.
Right.
And so all the way back to then, I just always, shouldn't say always because I didn't know it till we moved to BB, but I've been aware of racial differences since I was little. And I remember hearing about that part of town in BB.
Yeah. And be careful. Don't go over there.
Yeah, and I can't bring myself to say the N-word, but that was that town.
Right. Right.
Because I was brought up I'm a white guy, brought up by white parents in a predominantly white community, predominantly white church. There was a disconnect that is just natural,
right? And not on purpose. No, it just kind of fell that way. Yeah, it's kind of that's just where you ended up.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. But over the years, you hear jokes, and you hear people talking about the difference in communities and stuff like that. Right. And so all of that sort of stuff, whether intentional or unintentional, leads to what we have going on right now. Right. There's this complete misunderstanding of who you are, right, and who I am and why. And a lot of people don't know the history. Correct. A lot of people don't know that there are reasons why there is. And I've struggled myself at times to know whether or not should I even acknowledge that there's a difference between the white community and the black community, in traditions and in ways of family and communication. I've struggled about whether or not to even acknowledge that, or just say, no, we're just all human beings, Right. Right. Or whether I've tried to learn how to appreciate and not see it as one's right or wrong.
Yeah, a barrier or a divide.
Yeah, it's just the nature.
See it, and I guess what you're saying is you try to see it the best you could as more of a respect of differences. Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, but I guess the struggle is like in trying to see everybody as equal. Mm-hmm. We do miss out on appreciating some of the positive differences, but then it's difficult to know, is it okay for me to say black families do it like this? Well, I don't feel comfortable with it, because I can't lump every black family or every black man or every black woman all that just to say that's the way black people do things. Right. But at the same time, how do we say there is a difference? So that is why we need to do this. Right. So we're going to be candid. We're going to be real. We're going to. Right. I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to think, this dude has no clue.
This is the good piece. This is a good piece to our to the viewers that will be seeing this. For one, I almost said the P word. I almost said pastor, but Jason and I, we've already had a formed relationship here in the community, a respected relationship. Mm-hmm. We see each other here almost daily. Like he said, man, we started. I was youth pastor 5 years before I came here, and then we started here in pastoring about the same time. So we shared pretty much a lot in common. So and we kind of spoke about this already. So listen, it will probably be more uncomfortable for you all than it is for us. That's honestly, true. It will be, and we do. It's a good thing to do to be candid, man. Yeah. Somebody's gonna need to know this, and this is the thing, Jason. This may save. My daughter is 16. I have a 13-year-old and I have a 3-year-old. Maybe if they see something like this, it'll help them break that conversation barrier. Yeah, with their friends and stuff. Yeah, there's no other way to understand than to just sit down and ask and say, "Help me." And so I hope we can help each other. Let's do it, man. And like I told you the other day, this is not like me interviewing you. I mean, I want you to ask me. I want you to fire back. And you can laugh at me, whatever. But so I think we both have
we have different perspectives, but we both have the goal of unity and working together.
Right.
And so one thing though that helps us has, when I say you know where I'm coming from, so I'm not going to keep qualifying everything.
Okay? Right. There you go.
It helps.
But you're going to be free and candid, man.
It helps white people. Okay.
Right.
Is that we just don't know a lot of things, because when somebody says that even uses that phrase, the struggle, or talks about the difficulties that black people in America have faced, or right here in Arkansas or here in Lonoke.
Right.
I never experienced that, man.
Right.
So I want you to tell me some things like, what did you experience in school when you were a kid growing up? What if you have experienced, and you can start if you just want to tell me, like, what is the struggle? What in your mind, hashtag the struggle, what does that mean to you?
The struggle.
And tell me just like what happened when it's growing up in school. What was school like for you?
I seriously remember. I remember the deal of black and white. I seriously remember a guy coming to me in elementary school with the little Jingle Bell nursery rhyme. Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle all the way. But it was something about Santa Claus. He said, pull the trigger, shot her.
Mm-hmm.
Shot her, it's a, and I remember thinking in elementary, it seemed like I was in about the 5th grade, I want to say. I remember knowing I was proud and black. I remember knowing that my mother worked at the school, so if I hit him, I'm going to get in trouble. But I remember being mad enough to know what it was. So the struggle for us is not always financial. Sometimes the struggle for us is how we are viewed. I made a Facebook status just on yesterday, and see, sometimes when people don't know who we are, we get judged literally off of our skin color. So we can be the most intelligent person in the world, but if we have a hoodie on, to some people, we're just another thug. So there is a bit of a struggle on just recognition or people recognizing us for who we really are. But you would never know all of my accomplishments unless you really knew me. So there's a struggle in making sure that we're going, depending on where we are, how people view us, or if we go into a jewelry store, if we're serious enough about the piece of jewelry we're going to buy, or depending on what clothing store, we may go to, it's just a bit different. One other thing is, I think we spoke about is, you all would never know how it feels to get out of a car and a lady clench her purse. And seriously, it's more. It is. It's more so the Caucasian women that are, they'll clench that purse because they see thug or whatnot. So struggle is not necessarily financial, but most people will acquainted with financial because a lot of us typically grew up in what you would consider across the tracks, worse, some bad parts of a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So there are some people right now that's educated because they knew I didn't want this for my family. So I have to go to college. I have to finish. I have to get an education. I have to get a good job so that my kids don't have to experience the struggle that I experienced. So we go through it so our kids don't have to worry about it on.
But do you get out of it though? Because I mean, you've been successful. You're not broke. You're not living on the street. You are.
That is an awesome question. You can, because this is the thing. Even in the quote unquote the struggle, it is a mindset. Because for some people the struggle can be a bad place, but the struggle is where you learn a lot on the common sense level of what you learn on the educational level. The streets or the struggle would teach you a lot When I say a street, I'm even talking about from a thug perspective. Just having to do that, having to have kids that have to go because mother is having to work 2 or 3 jobs. So older sibling literally has to take care of baby siblings. Mm-hmm. It'll teach you as a young man growing up how to take care of your family once you get older. Mm-hmm. So even that in the struggle. So the struggle can be, that phrase can be acquainted with different areas or aspects in life. Mm-hmm. And it's a mindset. It can be as bad as you want it to be or as good as you want it to be. And the prime example would be this, and this wouldn't be I'm scared to use the neighborhood I'm thinking of here, but you would probably have what some people would acquaint us as thugs, then some people would acquaint on the Caucasian side poor white trash. But even when it comes to those terms, or those that are not as privileged, if we can say that, mm-hmm. there are some intelligent Caucasians that come from the quote unquote trailer park. But the thing that gave them that push, that urge, was knowing that I cannot afford for my child to grow up like I did. Right. So that's why I say mindset. It's something that you can use that negative to shift it to a positive.
So that struggle. So you're saying that struggle. If I'm hearing you right, you're saying that the struggle applies to white kids that are low income, poor families. It's the same way that it is for black kids.
It can be the same. It can be the exact. See, this is the thing.
Because I mean, I've heard black people say it doesn't matter how you grew up. If you are white, you don't know the struggle.
Yes, some of them do. Now, from an overall aspect,
because you're talking about, like, when you say that aspect of seeing people clench their purse and stuff like that, are you saying that the struggle's not a skin color thing?
I'm saying more so.
Okay.
It is a black thing, but I'm saying it's also a thing with the Caucasians as well. And I can say that even from, because you got to understand, I'm 16 years law enforcement, so I've seen every angle of pretty much every person. Mm-hmm. So I can speak from my perspective, whereas the typical person can only speak from where they are.
Yeah.
I've interacted with a lot of people. So
there are people though that would say, Byron, you grew up with your mom and dad in the house.
Right.
They both had good jobs.
Right.
You went to church. You had a great family. You don't know the struggle.
Some would seriously say that. Some would seriously say that. So my struggle, remember, because we're looking at aspect. So my struggle would be just growing up as a black man, because even with all of that, all some people still see is black. So that in itself is a struggle. You're absolutely right. So the typical person could say, man, listen, you grew up with the, what do they call it, the long handle spoon, the silver spoon or whatever, or the, I forgot what other word we were just talking about the struggle. So some will probably say, as far as my family, it is. But this is the thing. You wouldn't believe it. In our house, my mother and my father literally, not in a just where everybody's supposed to, literally raised us on a budget. This was funny. I didn't know we were blessed until I got older. And the reason I say that, it wasn't because the love wasn't there. It wasn't that. I knew they was educational, but they lived in such a way to where we wasn't spoiled growing up. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want some shoes, you go cut the grass, or go. It wasn't just ask and go get. Hey, throw me the keys to the car. No, my siblings and I, we've been working since we was about 15. My father literally had all of us. We were janitors in his school. Literally, like, filled out the application. Janitors in his. My first job was with a mop and a broom. And just because he was my father, it wasn't any if that job is not done, I'm gonna need you to come to my office.
Yeah.
So it was a serious deal still, you know. So yeah, man, that's.
So tell me, did you ever have experiences? You mentioned one. Were there others? Like, did you ever face blatant racism or anything like that?
Blatant. That was one of the most blatant. Now, Byron, that school was in. Where do I want to say it? Where do I want to say? On the backside of Gravel Ridge, backside of Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
Even in junior high. So we just experienced more of the not blatant, because I think some of them still knew his father is the principal.
Mm-hmm.
But we still experienced some things. I remember, and I'm just going to throw this out there, my sister, I remember when she went to school at North Pulaski, they played Cabot. I remember they all, and I don't think it was a school rivalry deal, they literally busted all the windows. That day, I'll never forget, my mother let her drive the van to a game. And she was so nervous on telling my parents the windows got busted out. But they busted a lot of windows out because they just knew some black people went to North Pulaski. And I think I remember just being young enough to know that they were saying it was still kind of racially motivated on one of those type deals. So we experienced it on that type of level. And I can answer it a little better when we get to the part to where when I grew up. So that was just some of the parts of being younger. So
yeah,
that's what we consider the struggle. It's a mindset, or however you grew up. Even somebody spoiled compared to somebody else spoiled can on some level experience a struggle, but not struggle as you hear the black community say. It was.
So what do you think about how do you feel when you hear black people talking about the struggle and about this systemic type of racism? Do you feel like there is that the system is kind of built against black people?
I do sometimes. Now I'm gonna hit that both ways. And I gotta be very honest and candid. I do believe it is.
Look. Yeah. We're talking.
We're talking.
Okay. I know cameras are on.
We so this is the thing.
This is candid.
We are. So with that being said, I do think it is a system that is built in a way to quote unquote keep us back. Now, why do I say quote unquote? Because on a proven stance, it would be something to where if I say this, anybody else can just come around and say, well, no, that's not how it is. When the reality is, like, even if we speak, and this will probably get all the way off topic, in a legal sense, I've literally seen it. I've literally seen it a bit different, even in what we're dealing with right now in this recent activity. So I do feel like, in a way, it is. But let's just say, on the sense of taken care of, I do feel like there are some people that are, and I don't think I should even say low poverty or whatnot. I don't know if I should say that, but I will say I think there are some people, let's just throw welfare out there, for example. I think there are some people that lives on the system a little longer than they need to. Let me say that. But I feel like the system is also kind of set up to make them be okay with bare minimum, without any aspects of going higher. Now, the typical person will say, well, that's not the system's fault. That's the individual's fault for them not wanting better for themselves. Yeah, but if you can make it in life and pay $5 in rent, the typical person is going to want to stay right where they are. So that's kind of what we have to face sometimes. But at the same time, that's no excuse to stay there. So I often even tell other African Americans, listen, use that as a stepping stone and work your way up. Never stay bare minimum. Always want more for yourself. I've always wanted more for myself. And I believe that's one thing we have to look at. You have to want more. You have to want more for yourself. So
the incentives, sometimes you're saying are more to stay on the system and get their kids on the system than it is to make something of themselves and be productive or whatever.
Sometimes it only depends on where they are in life, because some people, again, dealt with that struggle but said, I refuse for my kids to grow up like this. Mm-hmm. But then you have some people, depending on how they grew up, that will stay on that level and just live.
So how does that, I mean, is that racial?
I don't know if that's...
I mean, there are people who will say that will use that as an argument and say that the system is built to keep black people specifically oppressed, or to keep them on the system.
I believe it keeps them in a place to where, for the person that's weak-minded, for the person that may not have had that stability of both parents, or had that stability of having to grow up, and some that possibly had to grow up a little bit younger, it keeps them to a place to where they're happy with bare minimum. Mm-hmm. I do believe that. And sometimes it keeps us in a place to where we know where they are. So now when you get into a conversation like this and you're looking at the welfare and all that, then typically or generically you would go into the place of residence, where we get the hood and the projects from. The hood can be just your neighborhood or where you grew up at. The projects was a typical place, an apartment, a set of apartments, or a place of residence, if I can use that in lack of better words, where people typically grew up paying $7 in rent and $13 in rent. But guess what? That's all they had. Mm-hmm. And so, but to a city, or to we can use that, a city or a community, they will refer to it as them over there. Even here, I mean, I've heard the phrase, literally, them people over there in the hole.
In the hole?
In the hole.
Huh.
Over off of Palm Street. Uh-huh. I've heard it of them over there in the back end of town. So it keeps us in a place. Because typically, when we move in a neighborhood, or what we would consider, or what we would say, like a neighborhood like this, typically when we move in, y'all move out. Mm. See, because a lot of people just feel comfortable around their own. So that's another unofficial racial move, and it is literally a known language. Like, hey, when black folks start moving in white neighborhoods, white folks start moving out.
So that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I've heard.
So, but have you heard that before?
White flight, yeah, white flight.
So but when you all hear that, when we do move in, how do you feel about that? How does the people that you know that?
I mean, I've never lived in a neighborhood that did that. I mean, we never moved. Right. We moved because God called us to BB. We lived in the church parsonage. Right. We lived in the church parking lot. Right. And then my parents built a house out in the country. That was the first house they had ever owned. Yeah. And that's where I grew up. And then, my wife and I, we've never picked a house based on how many black people live there. Right. So, but I have definitely heard of white flight. And in fact,
how would you describe that?
Well, I've heard of Cabot being described as the white flight from Little Rock, or Bryant. That, and even right now in some of the development. I'm naming names right now, but I'm just saying that's the way I've heard of it. And I've heard of, like in Little Rock, I can remember going down downtown, in Little Rock, when before it was, the place to hang out. Right. When it was dangerous. Mm-hmm. And and I have, I don't know firsthand because I haven't been in all those neighborhoods, but I have seen and heard about, as they develop, there are black people that move out to this neighborhood because that's, the rent's too high, or they develop it. But I also, living in North Little Rock for 11 years, my girls, that was where they went to school.
Right.
It seemed pretty diverse to me. My girls didn't, until we moved to Lone Oak, the racial stuff wasn't really on our radar a whole lot.
Right.
The church that we were involved in at First Assembly, we were intentionally multiracial.
Right.
We just didn't.
And I've heard good things, all good things about. Shout out to Assembly, man. I've heard some awesome programs and some things. I hate to just jump in the church, but I had to give a shout out, man. But man, I've heard my cousin goes there, so I've heard good things about him. I just had to make sure.
Well, that's why. So when we moved here, so I have heard of white flight and stuff. That it sounds like I'm just an idiot, but I'm blind to it. No, I'm not. I'm aware,
right,
of all that stuff. But I for all that time, I've never experienced it. I haven't lived in a neighborhood where that happened. Of course, I've heard of that, but I wonder, is it really stuff like that? Does it just happen?
No, it's engraved. No, we've literally always I think that's my first time actually hearing it. White flight. I literally just heard, hey, when the black folks move in, the white folks move out.
Really?
That's just literally, that's just kind of, so it sounds like it's the same term.
I've heard that called white flight. That when when the blacks move in, that it's
ones that or have heard of it happening too. Have you ever asked people who know them, why did you all leave? Or what made you leave?
I've heard.
What's typically the response?
I couldn't tell you a specific conversation, really, and I don't know really that I've ever actually asked, why did you move out? I guess in my mind, I just always understood as if a family gets to the point where they can, move to a nicer neighborhood or get a new house or something like that. There's always, kind of in America, that's kind of the American dream, more stuff, more material,
right?
Nicer house, nicer car. It was just always. So I guess I just kind of always saw that as if you could buy a house where your property value is better, why wouldn't you do that and stuff like that? But so I've never really actually had a conversation where I've heard somebody tell me, man, we just had too many black people in our neighborhood, so I moved. But so I just wonder, how much of that is intentional.
Right. And
so you've heard that though?
I've heard it. And it would be tough, honestly, to just prove that's exactly what they moved, because for ones who may not want to have that direct conversation like what we're having, they would probably say the same thing. Hey, better piece of property over there. Family got bigger. But in reality, it was too many of them. And this is a word we don't like, y'all.
Now, I can tell you in Helena, that happens a lot. I know that's happening in those areas.
Right.
I know, like I said, I have heard that. I haven't had specific conversations. I just can tell you, I can remember hearing things like that. In Helena, West Helena, and all through the Delta.
Right.
White flight, man. When I go through there, you can see that.
Right.
You can see that.